Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio's second Friday food, wine, and travel show with the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. We do this every second Friday. We get to chat with travel writers and photographers about their craft. We talk about their recent travels, their adventures. And honestly, if you're in the industry, go to ifwtwa.org. They're an awesome organization. Also check out, they have an amazing conference coming up this year that's on Princess Cruises. So you're going to want to check that out. And speaking of cruising, we're welcoming back travel writer Debbra Brouillette. She is known as the Tropical Travel Gal, and she's joining us to talk about her cruise that wasn't to the tropics, but to Alaska. But she went in the summer because she's smart, and she's going to tell us all about her adventures there. Her story is up on nationalparktraveling.com and will be in the upcoming issue of Parks and Travel magazine. So welcome back, Deborah. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm great. Good to be here.
So going from like tropical beaches, because I remember the last time you were on the show, gosh, that was a while ago. Like when I think back, it was a few years.
2 or 3 years.
Yeah, everything, when you travel so much, you kind of everything gets compounded in a way. But I remember you being on the show, and I think we were only audio at that time too.
Right.
And you were talking about how, the beaches and everything. And then you were talking about even how you like to collect sand, and that you have a collection of sand. Some people, collect flowers and hippos or frogs. Like I'm a frog collector, but sand. And then I thought about you and shells. So going to Alaska, did you collect sand in Alaska? That's why I had to ask the first question.
I wish we were never really at a beach to get a sand sample, but no, I did not.
No glacier samples?
No glacier samples. We were not actually on the glacier.
Yeah, no, that'd be a little bit crazy. But you saw glaciers. I mean, I was reading through your article. I mean, miles, like 15-mile, 20-mile long glaciers you experience, which is something,
Well, yeah, Marjorie Glacier was like the highlight of Glacier Bay. It's incredible. And it's 20 some miles long, I think. But we saw glaciers throughout the day that we were cruising through Glacier Bay. But then in Juneau, we also did an excursion to Mendenhall Glacier, which was quite far away. We could see the glacier, and the glacial lake and a waterfall, but we were not close to the glacier.
Wow. And so this was all through a cruise that you did, and you went, July? You went in the summer, so it was smart. You had to have some sunshine, right? Did you get sunshine at all?
Oh, it was beautiful. We had sunshine every day, except for the very last day we were in Ketchikan. Our last port was kind of cloudy and misty, but it never really rained. And from what we understand, Ketchikan is kind of known for being rainy. But otherwise, we had bright sun in the high 60s, low 70s. All we needed was mainly just a light jacket occasionally. And it was just glorious. And we were on the Holland America Koningsdam ship from Vancouver. We started in Vancouver. And the Koningsdam is one of 3 Pinnacle class ships that Holland America has out of 14 ships. And it was just a 2650 passenger capacity. But the week we were on, the first week of July, there were only about 2,000 passengers.
This is really great that we're even talking about this time, because people are like already thinking summer, what are we going to do? And it's time to plan now. I wonder if it's already booking up like to that, capacity level for now.
I think it's definitely time to start looking and planning. Although, I mean, we didn't plan that far ahead, but it's definitely worth taking a look at. We had a veranda cabin, which I would highly recommend. So you have you can walk outside and watch the glaciers and watch the scenery.
No way, right from your doorstep. Like
Yeah.
literally. Wow. So, I mean, that's just so iconic. We see about the glaciers melting and everything, right? And you see it on the news and you hear it on all the climate reports and everything. But to be up that close, how does that make you feel in regards to, like, I kind of go back to when we look at William Shatner going to space, and he went out to space and he literally cried coming home, going, our world is so precious, our earth is so precious. And I feel like everyone I know that goes to Alaska and experiences what you've experienced has that same feeling of, and especially friends also in Antarctica, they've gone there, and I know so many scientists and artists and people have done that. They come back and they're like, this is real, man. You know what I mean? Did you have that feeling going there and witnessing these glaciers?
Yes, I did. And also I had friends who had been to Alaska like 15, 20 years ago. And when they saw my pictures, especially of Mendenhall Glacier, how much it had receded in the 15, 20 years when they were there, they were just shocked. And of course, I didn't have that perspective, but just to know that it is receding, and but it's still there. And the beauty of the mountains, I wrote about that. My dad was stationed in Alaska in the war. And so that was in like the 1943 to 1945. And just, I can only imagine what it looked like when he was there.
This is really fascinating, because I think, like, I want to tell people, go experience this now, right? While we all can do it, see it now. When we lived in Kenya, we have a storage unit, and it's really mostly Nancy's art and slides of photography from Canada, America, Africa, mostly England and Great Britain. But she has photos of Mount Kilimanjaro when it was really snow-capped. She has photos of water holes where you see just incredible diversity of wildlife species. And people come back and they're like, oh, I saw an impala and a crocodile and this. And I'm like, oh, we used to see this in the 70s and 80s when I was a kid. But, she has like this documented. And I wonder about, we've got to do something with that kind of series of footage, I think. What you're talking about, your friends who have been there, you've been there. And I feel like there's an urgency for us to travel, to experience before it goes away. And I don't want to be a doomsayer, doom gloomer kind of person, but I feel like an urgency to get out there and see it, and also to protect our planet. Did you kind of feel that while you were there too?
Well, I was just so glad that I finally made the decision to deviate from my normal tropical trips and do the Alaska trip, since I had kind of always had that feeling that I needed to go there, partially because my dad had been there in the war, and I had heard from him, how he really ended up making me become a tropical girl, because he had worked in the cold and he came back hating winter. And
oh, I bet after that, yeah.
So we always went to Florida, and so I grew up with that. And so it's like cold, no, but Alaska, I found out, is so beautiful, even in the summer, and the flowers were blooming, and it was just not what I really had in my head, that it was going to be totally beyond the glaciers. And when you get into the other parts, we did the White Pass Railroad trip in Skagway, which is definitely a must do, to see the terrain and how beautiful it is. We were away from the glaciers, of course, in that part, but just to the history of Alaska is just incredible.
And the communities, because I know that one area where, like, it's a historic district, the actual town is a historic district.
Yeah, Skagway.
And
it's called the Klondike Gold Rush National Historical Park. And that whole area, the entire town of Skagway and the White Pass area is all a national historical park. And
That's
it's
amazing.
yeah, and it's just, and the gold, the gold rush history was so fascinating that
That brings out all kinds of characters.
oh
You think
yeah,
about people going out there. I mean, you think about your dad in World War II out there. And I think we forget about World War II history in Alaska, but I mean, it was a prominent place.
and
Even
my
today,
dad was
you
he was a stevedore foreman with the Transportation Corps in Skagway, and he was responsible for the loading and unloading of all the supplies that came in for the military. And it was, we went to the museum and saw a lot of the World War II history while we were there, and saw some of the buildings that used to be used by the military. So that was a real special part of the trip. But I would just say there are so many excursions you can choose from when you do an Alaska cruise too. We had Juneau, Skagway, and Ketchikan.
Mhm.
And, in Juneau, we did the Mendenhall Glacier. We went to a salmon hatchery, and then we did a salmon bake out in the open, which I love salmon. And so we were able to, have our fill of fresh salmon. Another in Skagway, we went to a little restaurant and had halibut. And then in Ketchikan, we went out on a crab boat. And
Oh, wow. That's a whole different thing, going from a cruise ship to the crab boat.
Yeah, we went out on the boat, got to pull up the crab pots and see the big Dungeness crabs, and then got to go to the George Inlet Lodge and eat our fill of Dungeness crab, which was the best imaginable.
Wow. Well, it's really interesting about how seafood is. It's like you could go to Louisiana, it's going to be a different taste, right, than when you're in Alaska and getting crabs, and it's just that different thing, which I think is special as part of travel, is eating the local cuisine and really getting out. Like I think what's great is about you go on this Holland cruise, and you have these opportunities to do all these different excursions and choose from the excursions. So it's not like when you come on this cruise, you will learn about World War II history, whether you like it or not. But for you to go out and have this connection with your father's history, I think that that is when we get into authentic travel and memorable travel. I mean, you could see what your dad went through in that museum, right? You're able to stand where he was, right, at some point.
A couple places we were, yeah, because
wow.
Because of things that I had found in his box of Army things.
Yeah.
So yeah, in Juneau, we got to go to an old hotel where he had eaten dinner, at least. I'm not sure if he stayed there, but the hotel is still there, the historic Baranoff Hotel. And he was there on July 4th, and we ended up being in Juneau on July 4th. And so we took the menu of the restaurant and went to the hotel and took pictures and talked to them. And that was real special. And, but.
That's amazing, that family history, to be able to experience that where someone has been. And we talk about this on shows. And I think we can talk about it all we want, but until you actually experience it, there's just some deep pull in our hearts that you can't even really explain it. I don't know if the arts can do it maybe better in writing and music and film, but there's something that just is so core, when you have that experience.
It made me feel closer to him. He's been gone since 1984. So I wish now I could talk to him a lot more.
Just
about
call him up like, Dad, dude, I went there. You'll go go around the corner. I saw so-and-so do this, But to understand what he lived through too, the terrain is also a special.
I do have other things. I'm going to write a separate article about that because I think it's so special. But about Holland America, I think it's really fascinating that Holland America has been cruising Alaska for 75 years.
Oh my gosh. I
They
didn't
marked
realize that was,
75 years cruising Alaska
wow,
in 2022. And so they have been the
wow, they're
longest,
pioneers. Yeah.
right.
Well, pioneer stock of Alaska, right? That goes well.
So just think that was what, back in the 50s? Yeah, so they're the longest, and also in Glacier Bay, only 2 cruise lines are allowed to cruise Glacier Bay National Park every day. And they are one of the 2 cruise lines that have that authority.
Wow. Well, I think they have to balance it, especially when we get into national parks. There's a balance. I mean, even
Right.
now we're getting into, it was weird over the pandemic. People started to realize, oh, we love our outdoors. We understand why we need to take our dogs for a walk. All of that happened in our community parks. They're like, oh, yay, we need them. But our national parks also saw this incredible spike in visitorship, which is what we do as we travel the country, But now it's like, okay, we can't love our parks to death. And there's like reservation systems and things that are happening, especially in our big, like Glacier National Park. That's a big park. Yeah, Mountain Rainier National Park is going to happen. And certain places you may need a reservation depending on the time you go. But I think we have to have those balances of, whoever is, bringing people in and that has that approval to do that. We have to have that balance. And so it's really cool to align with those companies that do it because they also understand and respect because they don't get that qualification without going through a series of understanding, like, don't get up to the whale, you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So it seems like environmental stewardship comes from that company, the Holland
Yeah,
Cruise.
Holland America is very tied into that, and they only serve sustainable seafood. All the seafood that they serve on board is fresh. Wow. And they also have a naturalist on board that comes on board during Glacier Bay, but then there's also a naturalist on board to give talks throughout the week when you have sea days. We had like 3 days at sea. And so it was quite interesting to go to some of the presentations and meet the park rangers and
oh, that's so cool.
Answer questions.
So were you able to get off on foot in Glacier Bay National Park? Were you able to go hike around, or were you mostly on the boat when you were there?
Oh, we were totally on the ship.
Okay. And were you able to see wildlife? Because you saw bald eagles and things, right? You saw wildlife while you're on the ship.
We saw the bald eagles when we were in Juneau and Ketchikan off the ship. When we were going through Glacier Bay, we saw some seals on the icebergs, but they were pretty far away. So we didn't actually see anything close up. We didn't see any bears or anything. There were excursions that people could take to fly onto a glacier at some of the other areas, but we didn't choose to do that.
That's kind of trippy though. I have a friend who did one of those and I'm like, I don't know, but then I feel like, like really, you're going to walk on ice, and land on ice, So did you talk to any of the passengers who did that, like that flew on there?
I did not, although I know another travel writer friend who has done that in the past, but, and I've seen the beautiful photos and, the ice is so blue. It's just.
Is it really blue? Like when you see it, that's gotta be kind of trippy to see that.
But there were so many endless excursion choices. I mean, you could do this cruise 10 times and see different things every time.
Oh, wow.
It was hard to make the choices because I knew that we only had 3 port stops to choose from, all the choices. And, so I chose glaciers and salmon and crab and then the train, the White Pass Railroad.
Oh, yeah.
And then, we also did a trolley city tour of Skagway. But I mean, for any interest, the person can find the right excursion, because, and Holland America just really has, I don't know, I think there was like 300 or 400 total excursions that you could choose
Wow,
from.
that's a
I mean,
lot.
maybe not for our particular cruise, but
For,
yeah, and
like,
you can also
overall.
choose to start in Seattle or Vancouver on this cruise, and we
And you
chose,
start in Vancouver, yeah.
yeah, because we had never been to Vancouver, and we got in a couple days early and were able to see things there. So
Mm. So what's interesting to me, because I know that you love the tropics, and you look at the blue from the glaciers, that almost turquoise, and that white, and then that blue water. So in some way, and even the flowers, did you feel like the polar opposite of the tropics, but there was some commonality?
oh gosh. I was just happy to feel the sun and to see the flowers, and to also to just to talk to the people that live there. And some of them are seasonal workers. They'll be there in the summer, and then in the winter they'll leave and go back to the lower 48 and to Florida or wherever they live. The tour guides in Skagway that we had actually spend part of the year in Florida after.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of the shops and restaurants basically shut down in the winter months. And so they kind of rotate which restaurant will be open that week in the
Oh,
winter,
wow.
because there just aren't that many people. The population of the towns really swell in the cruise season, which is basically from May through early October, I believe.
Okay.
And so those are the months that you have to choose from to cruise Alaska.
Well, that's good information to know. I mean, I don't know if I want to go to Alaska in the snow. I'm a little baby about it, but some people do. They fly in. I don't think you can cruise in, like you're saying, but I don't think you'd want to,
No,
but
really. I loved the July dates that we chose, but I think, May, June, July, August, if you're getting into September, it could be a little colder, but things vary from year to year.
What was a highlight other than your dad, right? Following in your dad's footsteps, I think that's just going to be such a prized memory and just a touching experience. What was a highlight for you on this cruise?
Oh gosh, it was, I would say, split between the things on the ship and then the things we were able to do off the ship, having the good mix, a highlight. I guess Skagway,
that's nice.
Skagway was still probably a highlight because we got to spend a long day there, and we were able to do both the White Pass Railroad excursion, spend time in the town, go to a really cool little restaurant and talk to people, go to the museum, walk around the town, do the trolley tour. And the guides were so incredible. We went to the Gold Rush Cemetery, and
that's cool.
Skagway was probably my favorite day, even apart from my dad. It was just a cool place.
Yeah, and then this railroad experience, this train experience, seems like that's something everyone must do.
I would say it's a must do. Yeah, if you get to Skagway and you don't do the White Pass Railroad, I mean, the scenery is incredible. The guides are on board to kind of give you the history of the gold rush, and it just kind of really is a history lesson on top of the beauty of the scenery.
It's like what you say about going on the trolley. Those kind of guides, like when you go to a town, if you can go to one of those tours first before you explore, it gives you all the knowledge you need, you know what I mean, to really understand where you are.
And then, back on board, then you get to go back on board and have wonderful meals. The specialty restaurants were incredible. And then at night, the music walk is an area on the ship with several different music venues according to what you like.
I like that.
BB King's Blues Club, like
No,
they have in Memphis.
really? What? You have a BB King? Now let's just stop the interview on all the other fancy stuff. Let's get to the blues. You had a BB King lounge, like really?
Oh yeah, with the incredible singers, and they would have the music. Then they also had comedians performing a couple nights.
Oh, cool.
And then another area that we really liked was called Billboard on Board. And they had like two piano players singing the old songs, and you could put in your
dueling
request.
pianos and
They weren't really dueling, but they were singing back and and you could request songs, the old songs. And then there was the rock room that was not my style. It was a little too loud.
So it seems like it's got a little bit for all generations and musical tastes. Like you could go from one night to I love that. Pensacola. I lived in Pensacola when I was just 21, maybe turning 20. Yeah, naughty time, right? And there was this area called the Seville Quarter, and it's still there. Actually, Visit Pensacola was on the show a few months ago, and I asked her, like, is it still there? Oh my gosh, did you go to the Seville Quarter?
Yes.
There's like,
I spent a summer in Pensacola after college, so.
Oh my gosh, so you go from one bar to the other in this historic building, right? And one was a sports bar, which I have no clue about any of that, but it's like, all right, whatever. But then they had like the blues, the rock, all these different bands. And I was like, I am in heaven, because you could just go from, I don't know, it's just like this musical experience like I'd never had, other than going to festivals with different stages of music. But this was just so more intimate. And I feel like that's what you're saying about this cruise ship, had that kind of like, ooh.
And it was all within one area. It was amazing. You really couldn't.
And you don't have to drive home.
Oh, no. And
see, that's the other thing. Yeah.
You could spend part of the night in the Billboard on Board pianos and then walk around the corner and be at BB King's.
I want to go to the BB King's.
And then in the big world stage is where they had the major presentations, and they also had dance performances there as well as the educational. I think they had perhaps classical performance one night that we didn't go to. So yeah, it's really every taste of music, every taste of food.
Did they touch on the local kind of cuisine on the ship, or was that mostly when you were off the ship?
Oh no, on the ship as well.
Oh wow, cool.
I had wonderful salmon on the ship. I had, I think, rockfish that was really good.
She went to Alaska for salmon. Let's just get it straight.
Salmon,
I know there's
halibut,
her father's history, but she wanted the Alaska. She wanted the Alaskan salmon. Well, did they talk about that? Because there's issues with salmon in the Pacific Northwest. Did anyone talk about that in the education part about what's happening with salmon?
Well, I think it's mainly the crab fishing has been restricted.
Oh,
I'm not sure about the salmon.
Well, it might be easy up there compared to like Washington, Oregon, going through issues, but it seems like it's turning around also, which is great.
I know there, the crab boats have been restricted to. It's like something has happened with the amount of crabs that are being developed or coming through. And so they were kind of restricting it, I think, but we still had them. And I don't know if that's going to affect down the road. And then the salmon hatchery we went to was really interesting, showing the salmon, the hundreds, millions of salmon that come through, and they're actually hatched and grown there.
Yeah.
That was fascinating. Yeah.
And so that's interesting, because then you get a real understanding about what you're eating and ingesting. So you have a value and appreciation for your food. I think so many times we just, it's grocery store to the plate or through a fast food place. So we forget to stop and have that value of what has gone through life to to feed us, right? And so, and to really sustain us and also get that taste. So I think that's really important that you went to the hatchery and the fisheries and on the crab boat from the, went from the cruise liner to the crab boat, to have that understanding, and even going in the towns, because these are like the Pacific Northwest is really interesting going. These towns, I mean, everything is about fishing. You're walking around, it's all about the boats, the boat yards. It's a way of life. And you, unless you're in those kind of communities, you forget what that way of life is. And you can go in the South and, Charleston area and, South Carolina and go through the same kind of thing. But it's different each place, but yet it's still that common thread of we're out in the seas and anything can happen. And it's a rough life. And so there's a respect that comes from that when you step foot in those places. And I think that's the beauty of travel writing and traveling the world, because we're not just going as a passenger going, "Ooh, this is so nice." We're also getting that feel for, hey, you've got to understand where this comes from. And you know what I mean? So did you feel that when you were there, that appreciation for those who go out and get those fish and those crabs?
Oh, very much so. And just for the people who choose to live in Alaska, I think they have a really different spirit. It's like, it was hard.
Perseverance.
Yeah. And they have to really love their state and their land. And then, of course, all the indigenous people, we had some of them come aboard as well.
Oh, wonderful.
Talk to us. So, I mean, just the heritage of Alaska, was not a state until 1959. And so there were people there, eons before. And so all of that heritage and culture was brought in a little bit too. But it was interesting, the people that live there, they're dependent on shipments of food coming up from Seattle mainly. And, they may not get certain foods every week. And they were talking about tomatoes and lemons and things that, maybe it didn't come that week. So they'd go to the store and there wouldn't be any. There wouldn't be any certain things. And so it's a different lifestyle to live in Alaska.
And so as travelers, we need to understand that too.
Yeah.
Like, you may not have a tomato on your burger, get over it.
Yeah, but I would say it was a life-changing experience for me in some ways. It was unforgettable. It was a trip that I am so happy that my husband and I finally made the time to do. And I would just really say, do it. It's a part of the US that we don't. It's way up there, but go. It's
right.
And the Inside Passage cruises, it goes up the Inside Passage. You do not have rough seas. It's very smooth sailing. You don't have to worry about being seasick, and it's definitely a trip of a lifetime.
So next up, you are going back to the beach, I heard.
Of course. Yeah, I haven't been to the other blue waters for a while, so we're going to the Bahamas to hopefully do a little snorkeling and scuba diving and get back under the water a bit.
Oh, do you like to scuba diving? That's cool. I've only done snorkeling, but scuba diving, I'm like, I don't know, maybe because I just still have a cold, so I'm still coughing a little bit. I'm like, I don't know if I want to go underwater yet, but I think salt air and the sunshine cures everything. I'm just saying. And a Bahama mama.
Yeah, I haven't been to this part of the Bahamas yet, so it'll be interesting to add to my list, add to my sand collection.
I know, I was going to say sand samples. You got to have the sand samples. So when you get the sand, I know I probably asked you this the last time, but do you take it to a lab and have it like checked out, or do you just keep them to look at them and or do you like, there's like, I know it's got to be interesting to look at, like. A lab.
Yes, on my website, tropicaltravelgirl.com, I did a blog post on how I display my sand collection and my shells. And you can see there, I put them all in little glass bottles and label them and have them displayed. And you can see all the different colors and textures of the sand. And it's just really fun to see how different they are. Some people actually put sand under a microscope. And
Yeah, that's what I was interested. Yeah.
you can
Ooh.
see the different crystals and the different types of things that the sand is formed from. And I really need a microscope.
Yeah, that's
So I
what I'm
can
thinking.
start
Is
doing
like
that.
to actually see under a microscopes. I mean, as a kid in science class, that just tripped me out. I was like, the world is like a kaleidoscope. We can go crazy, you know. I was just thinking about Hal Brooke today. Was talking about Mark Twain. As we record this, it's Hal Brooke's birthday,
Oh,
the day we're recording, and he was talking about Mark Twain, of course, and he was talking about Mark Twain was this and that. He contradicted himself so much. It was a kaleidoscope. And I was thinking about our interview and I was like, well, that's what sand is like. It's this pristine thing and then it gets bashed around, but it's like, I'm still pristine. It's like, leave me alone. You know what I mean? So I feel like when we look at sand, it's telling this just ancient history. And to look at it under a microscope, it's like this whole other viewpoint of it. So yeah, I hope you get a microscope. You need one for Christmas. It's coming. Christmas will come soon. You know, that would be awesome. That would be
Yeah.
awesome. I wish you got some from Alaska, though. That would have been cool.
I'll have to see if someone can send me a sand sample from Alaska.
I know, right? Because it would be cool. Or Skagway or somewhere just nearby. Just get it. Do you only do it on beaches or do you do it out in forests?
I just do the beaches. I know there are sand collectors that collect sand from like river, lakes, other things, but I have never gotten to that extent.
Well,
But
but it's interesting because even the Pacific Northwest, the beaches are not as sandy like in California or Florida, right? I mean, you get a lot of driftwood, and so that'd be interesting to see.
I did get some sand from Washington State when I was in Washington State, but they were at a beach. So
Yeah,
but the colors are so different and the textures. The whitest sand I have of all my sands are from like the Destin, Florida area.
oh yeah. So it's that. Oh, what is it? Is it quartz that is?
Quartz, yeah, the quartz sand. And there are white sands, but the white, like sugar white, is really from that panhandle area of Florida.
It's beautiful. It is beautiful. I mean, you can't believe it's part of America. You know what I mean? It just, we always think, these different sides, but that in between zone of beach is so different, And it's interesting when you think about Washington State with all the driftwood and then going south to Oregon and even Northern California, they have all the broken glass like in Fort Bragg. So I wonder how much glass gets into the sand, like how much of it is broken glass that's mixed in. Oh, I want a microscope and sand samples. You've taken me back to science class. Thank you. I feel like a kid again. That's awesome.
Okay.
Well, it has been a real pleasure to have you back on the show, Deborah. Everyone, you can go to Deborah's website, which I encourage you to do, and go look at her sand samples, right? So go to, number one, let me go back. Let me backtrack. HollandAmerica.com is the website to go to learn more about going to Alaska, but also keep up with Deborah at tropicaltravelgirl.com. And of course, the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association, we do these conversations, in-depth conversations that are paired up with articles from travel writers, all members of what we say is IFTWA. So how many years do you think you've been a member of IFTWA? I know it's been a few now.
Since 2018.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I went to the first conference I went to with IFTWA was on Whidbey Island, Washington.
Oh, right. Washington. Yeah. That's beautiful, that area.
And yeah, it was my kind of entree into discovering Washington State. And now I just love Washington State. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and then a lot of our articles are also on Food Wine Travel Magazine, fwtmagazine.com.
It's awesome magazine. It's beautiful.
I just this year was elected to the board of directors for IFTWA, so I'm getting even more involved and looking forward to our conference at sea in October.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're going to be part of that. That's going to be neat because it's on the Princess Cruises. Like,
Yes.
so there's a lot of cruising. And from what I've heard, like this 360 experience on the Princess Cruises, we had John Paget on our show, the chair or the president of Princess Cruises on just a few weeks ago. And I mean, this is some incredible experiences some of the IFTWA riders have already had. And I'm like, I want to go and have lavender float off my plate and bees and, this, I want to go,
Yeah, I haven't been able to do that yet, of course, but, Princess Cruises and Holland America are related. They're part of the same umbrella cruise organization.
Under Carnival, maybe, all under Carnival,
I'm
maybe?
not
I don't
sure.
know. I don't know, but like they're doing the right stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And Rudy, the chef, that's kind of like overall the chefs, is going to be on our cruise. He was also, there's a Rudy's Celle de Mer, one of the specialty restaurants on the Holland America Koningsdam, was just my favorite meal of the week. And he is the originator of that restaurant. And
cool.
And he's also going to be part of our conference at sea. So
that is fantastic.
Looking forward to that.
And everyone, I know we're going to be doing a show on the conference coming up in May or June, so watch for that. And go to ifwtwa.org because registration is open whether you are a member or not. And honestly, I just say, just become a member. Go become a member and be part of it, like the whole experience, because for members, like you get to be part of the fam tours and everything that happens. So if you're a travel writer, photographer, author, this is a place for you, but also the destinations, because everybody networks. That's what's so cool about these conferences, and just IFTWA as a whole is what I see is just like everybody comes together. And I think that's important. Even during the height of the pandemic, what IFTWA did, they didn't go, okay, the pandemic, we're shutting down. They went, we're going to town. We're going to do webinars. We're going to get everybody on board. So that to me was amazing what happened, so very cool.
Yes, we do a lot of webinars, and we have a very active Facebook group. We do a lot of social sharing. I'm also helping to get more press trips for our members this year.
Okay, awesome.
So yeah, we just have a lot of really neat things going on. I'm really glad that I found this group and that I've been able to be more a part of the organization.
Yeah.
And last year I was with Linda Milks that you interviewed recently in Olympic National Park for that trip. So that was one of our IFTWA sponsored trips.
And she just came back from Jordan and now she's in South Africa. And I'm watching her post going, you're in my home country, or I graduated high school. I'm jealous. I want to go home. And I know every place she's going and it's freaking me out, like in a good way. I'm just going, so it's amazing, all these experiences, but just to have that network of people, I know everybody even fact checks each other's articles, like, hey, no, this didn't happen that day. This is what happened. Fix it, So I think that's really nice because writing is such a solitary endeavor. The travel can be in some ways because, there's traveling as a tourist, traveling as a traveler, but then traveling as a travel writer. It's not just about what you're experiencing. You have to have your eyes and ears open to things for your audience. So, and then it's like, oh my gosh, you don't just come home with one story. How do we divide it up? Because really, we could write a book by the time we do one trip. Isn't that one of the hardest things?
Yes, and this particular Alaska trip, I already have like 3 at least articles to do, maybe 4. I mean, in my head, 2 are already partially written. So there's a lot to say and to share. Yeah, no, that's awesome. So everyone, again, keep up with Deborah. Go to
tropicaltravelgirl.com, even though she went to Alaska. She snuck off. Check it out. And also, again, IFTWA's, ifwtwa.org. Also, Debra's article is up on nationalparktraveling.com. So just type in Glacier Bay. You'll find it there. And of course, keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. We do our IFTWA shows every second Tuesday, second Friday, third Monday, third Friday. I think I got it right. But thank you so much, Deborah. Such a pleasure to have you back on the show.
Thank you.